People often dismiss Christianity with a simple phrase, "It's not logical." But before we accept that conclusion, shouldn't we ask a more important question? Is the reasoning actually flawed, or do they simply reject the starting assumptions? That's a distinction many people never stop to consider. Today we're exploring one of the most important tools in critical thinking, the difference between a valid argument and a sound one. Because before we evaluate anyone's conclusions, we first need to ask whether the reasoning is correct and whether the premises it rests upon are actually true. Let's begin with validity. Validity has nothing to do with whether the premises are actually true. It only asks one question. If the premises were true, would the conclusion necessarily follow? Picture a perfectly lined up row of dominoes. If the first one falls, every domino after it must fall as well. The chain of reasoning works exactly as it should. Now consider this argument. All fish can fly. Salmon are fish, therefore salmon can fly. Obviously, the first premise is false, but that's the point. We're not testing whether the premises are true. We're testing whether the reasoning works. If those premises were true, the conclusion wouldn't be anything else. The logic isn't broken. The starting assumption is. Validity examines whether the conclusion follows from the premises, not whether the premises themselves are true. Now let's talk about soundness. A sound argument has two requirements. First, it must be valid. Second, its premises must actually be true. For example, all humans are mortal. Socrates is human. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. The reasoning is valid. The premises are true. That makes the argument sound. Think of building a house. Validity is careful construction. Soundness is careful construction built on solid ground. A beautifully built house resting on quicksand won't stand for long. Neither will an argument resting on false assumptions. This matters far beyond philosophy classrooms. Every worldview begins somewhere. One person concludes miracles never happen. Another concludes miracles are possible because God exists. Notice something here. The disagreement often isn't about the evidence itself. It begins much, much earlier, with the assumptions we bring to the evidence. It's just like the pieces of driftwood that are floating downstream. Conclusions often drift wherever the current beneath them carries them. We spend so much time arguing over the floating debris that we rarely stop to examine the current itself. That's what I call the invisible premise. It's the hidden assumption quietly directing everything that follows. This is why good questions are often more valuable than quick answers. Instead of immediately attacking someone's conclusion, ask what must already be true for that conclusion to follow. Sometimes you'll discover the reasoning is perfectly valid, but the foundation is unsupported. Other times you'll find both the reasoning and the assumptions withstand careful examination. Critical thinking isn't about winning arguments, it's about honestly following the evidence wherever the evidence leads. The next time someone says, "That's not logical," don't stop at the conclusion. Ask whether the reasoning is invalid, or whether the disagreement begins with the assumptions. A valid argument can still be false. Only a sound argument gives us good reason to trust the conclusion. Before accepting anyone's conclusion, examine the foundation it rests upon, because every conclusion ultimately stands or falls with the truth of its starting point. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.